If you're on social media or in any workspace, I'm sure you've heard the term Gen Zs and how they're radically changing what it means to be a worker. In this generation, and a lot of feathers have been ruffled. Wondering how to handle, a new generation that is changing, the workspace. I have here with me Goke Balogun. He's a HR professional and co-founder of So Fresh. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Is this a myth or is it actually a fact? This Gen Z tag now about how, what we traditionally thought it meant to be an employee is changing so much, where they are holding employers even more accountable and sometimes ruffling feathers much more than we're used to.
So I don't think it's a myth. And at the same time, I think there is a lot of exaggeration about the impact or the effect, or more like a reaction because the older generation did not expect it, so it's coming as a surprise. But it's not a myth. And, if you just look around, the world is changing at a very drastic pace. Yeah. And so they're born in the internet generation. There's globalization. There's a lot of independence and, talk about liberalism, equality. And this is what is shaping their worldview. There's also just generally speed. When I look at my kid and the speed at which they have access to information, when they're doing their schoolwork and all of that. So a lot of things have changed, and so their mindset is very, very different. It's interesting that before, this, the section we're talking about Afrobeats and football. Again, the career models these people are open to. It's now very normal to say, I want to become a footballer, I want to become an influencer, I want to become an artist. It's very normal conversation people have. So a lot of things have changed, and that has also impacted the mindset of others at the workplace.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere, I'm not sure if it was by 2035 or so, I'm not sure exactly the year, that a third of the jobs that would exist then do not even exist today. That's how quickly they're changing. Because you mentioned influencer there, for example. Yeah. It wasn't a thing 7 years ago.
Absolutely.
But it's a full-time job now for a lot of people. But is that a bad thing, though? That this generation is changing the way we see work. People have also argued, is it really a Gen Z thing, or did the pandemic affect a lot of our reasoning around how work should look? What do you think it is?
So first, it's not a bad thing, but then there also needs to be a balance into how the Gen Z, the people in that space are approaching work. Because yes, speed, changing work patterns and all of that, but there's also the space, the place of experience in managing that, that balance. And talking about the pandemic, what the pandemic did was it sped up the process of what we're seeing now. So if you look back on the internet, check back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there's a lot of material about how the Gen Zs will come and change the workspace. And people did not really think it was going to happen this fast. What happened was the pandemic sped it up. Now you have remote work became very acceptable. Work changing dynamics became very acceptable. The tools with which we were working, people now even saw a lot about the importance of social media. It became primary and center. For example, my business, we did a lot more on social media than we did physically. And it's a primarily physical business. But we did a lot more on social media and online in about 6 months than we did physically. That completely changed the business model. So yes, the pandemic really sped up the process of remote work and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, I know I read somewhere that millennials are the first generation that are earning less than the generation before them. Gen Zs are probably going to be affected even more. The conversation around how the world is now, the economies of countries around the world are tanking left, right, and center. It's happening everywhere. Everyone is already talking about a recession that's definitely going to happen in a couple of months, whether it's in the United States or in a poor country. So how do you, as a HR person, let a young person understand that they still need to do all the work? in a time when they're not earning as much as they should or as their parents did, you know, which is where a lot of the Gen Z arguments on their side comes from, because they get a lot of flack, you know, but they also say, well, we're doing all these things. Why should we do all these things when we're not going to get our money's worth? How, as a HR person, do you handle that psychology?
So I'm going to like to answer that in two parts. The first is employers must also become comfortable with Gen Z's not staying at work for a long time, because guess what? They have more options. So if they're doing a lot of this work and they don't feel compensated enough, they have a lot of options. There are people that are living in Nigeria and working for global companies remotely. And so that will continue to happen. Even immigration right now is becoming, you know, I won't say simpler, but more accessible. People have a lot more information on how I can, you know, immigrate out of this country to this country and that country. And so that is going to continue to happen. So as an HR professional, especially, you know, the more, you know, older generation, I think the important thing will be to look at the workspace. How do you redesign your workspace to accommodate the changing times? People want a lot of flexibility with their work. People want focus on work-life balance. People also want, you know, a lot of, they thrive where there's innovation and they're able to tie the work they do to something that is meaningful and purposeful. So the HR needs to look into designing the workspace right from the job interview. So the experience also matters as well as the workspace. So if you're going to get the best out, you know, of the Gen Z, the people entering the new workforce, we need to redesign the workspace right from when they are coming in. So interestingly, you know, my company works with a lot of the Gen Zs. About 60% of our workforce are the Gen Zs. And one thing I know the value is the value when the company is open to listen to their ideas and they feel like they are contributing and their work is meaningful. It's not just for them to work and just give instruction and I expect them to carry it out. Maybe that was what used to exist, but now they want to tie their work to something that is meaningful. They want to see a meaningful path to growth and development. And so we have to design the workspace to accommodate, you know, those things to get the best out of them.
Yeah. So we're in a time now where we've seen unemployment and underemployment statistics in Nigeria at about 33% or so, which is beyond belief. You know, and a huge chunk of that are young people, which of course the Gen Z generation makes up. How do you reconcile that with the fact that I also hear a lot of employers say we can't find people to employ, or people never stay, or I employ someone and in 2 months they've moved to another job. So it almost seems like there's work, but there's also a lot of people who can't get work. How's that happening?
So it's a big irony, and I think that leads us back to our educational system. So I think, in my experience, the educational system is failing because it's not preparing a lot of the younger people for the workspace, and also I think that because the future of work generally is changing, so a lot of the Gen Zs too probably don't want to do the work that exists. You know, you just said by 2035, a lot of the work that will be available don't exist today. And that is what they see. That's the future they're seeing. So you're asking them to do this, but they want to do something else. So some of them would rather leave that work and even go back, you know, go on Udemy, go on YouTube, and 6 months, they're changing their career. So we have to, like I said, employers need to rethink a lot about how the jobs are designed, the tools they are using for the job. And we need to take, you know, very seriously our educational system. How is it preparing people to come into the workspace? So what you find is that the people that get jobs, and, you know, it's almost like we are recycling the same set of people that are prepared for the workspace. So, you know, people now want to employ, and you're looking for someone that already has experience, so the person can move around and can move around quickly, where you have a large chunk of people that are not employable. So the employers just need to rethink their workspace. For us, for example, we have now really prioritized training, and within the first 2 years, you know, it's about upskilling, you know, whoever comes into the system. But again, you ask yourself, is that sustainable? Can every company do that? So we need to go back to the educational sector and see how the curriculum and the teaching methodology support people coming into the workspace.
All right, on the final note now, like I said, the pandemic changed a lot of things. There's people who have still not gone back to the office. I have friends who they've said, oh, they've called me back, but I'm still working from home.
Yeah.
And offices are functioning in spite of that. What do you think is the future of work, especially in Nigeria? Can Nigeria thrive with remote work? And I know certain sectors probably can. I mean, the tech sector is booming. Some sort of retail spaces are also able to function that way. But is it sustainable? And do you think that definitely is the future in Nigeria?
So maybe it's the future, somewhere far in the future, but in the very immediate, beyond the pandemic, if you look at our own environment, from issues around power to internet infrastructure and so many other infrastructural challenges, I think the office still has a big place to play. And eventually, I believe it's going to be an hybrid. Some industries don't even allow for it at all. That's clear. But for where it's possible, I think it's a hybrid will be the best option. And even where it's possible to go under remote, I believe that there is a place for synergy and just that physical, face-to-face happening in the workspace that helps work move faster and helps the chemistry within the workforce. So I'll say hybrid is where I think the future of work will be.
Thank you very much, Goke, even if you didn't bring us any so fresh juice. I had to call you out there. But keep doing the good work that you do.